So welcome back everybody, this is Paul again and making another of my videos. And like I've said in many of my videos, I make them because I want to have a dialogue with people. I'm just a nobody out here, my 2 cents I put out there. I make some observations and share them. And there's a lot of information that I gather, and rather than try to put it in text form and comments, I started thinking, well, maybe we should just get it out there and have a conversation because there's a lot of main issues going on in our life, and if we have a dialogue between us directly and bypass the politicians and maybe kind of have more direct conversation about different issues, then we might make some progress here. And one of the things that's a major discussion these days is the climate. And I've made a lot of posts, and I know sometimes they get taken in different contexts, but my feeling about climate is that the very nature, the very phrase climate change is a little bit ridiculous in a way, because if you're going to school and you learn right away that over the long history of the earth, the climate changes. That's what it is, long-term weather change. So the idea that, climate doesn't change is really quite preposterous. Now, the question that people talk about is, well, did man cause all this change? Now, let's do a little thinking about this for a minute here. We know that once upon a time there was a huge ice sheets on North America, and they tell us we had ice ages and big huge mammoths and all those big animals went extinct, and human beings are still here. So somehow people survived. And if we're talking about climate change, oh my goodness, I mean, there was like 1.5 miles of ice on top of places like Ohio and upstate New York and all the way up into Canada. And all that stuff melted. And of course it changed all the coastlines around the world over a period of time. And we know now, for example, that they found 2 cities off the west coast of India that had to be above water. They're along what used to be a riverbed. And it's at least 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years ago. Cities on a river, under the water. So they had climate change. So the question is, pollution. Yes, a lot of pollution does cause heat areas around big cities and so on. But when you say climate change, just climate, it's very, very complex because, as I was saying, the ice sheets melted not because we had too many cars. And that was the most massive climate change that we've had. And for long ages on this earth, the earth had huge long ice ages, and it was the warm periods that allowed civilization. Now, I think the panic is a little bit extreme, because if we say the coastlines are raising just a couple millimeters a year and 4 millimeters a year, that's very, very slow. And if we're sensible people and we're intelligent, we say, well, look, why build a house right on the beach there? Go have some common sense, because climate changes. So the idea that people say, well, you're a climate denier. What's that? A climate denier. I don't deny there's climate, and I don't deny it changes. I deny that all the change on climate on the earth is completely due to humans. It's not completely due to humans. There are other factors in climate that we don't tend to think about. And if you think about the oceans heating up, and maybe it's because there's millions of little volcanic vents under the ocean, so maybe the core of the earth is heating up too, and maybe that's sending heat out through the oceans and out into the atmosphere. And maybe there's a whole bunch of major big factors that are just really hard for us to comprehend, because our climate science is just really short. Think about any of us on this earth right now. Maybe I'm 64, so I've only been here 64 years, and let's say, most of the people on this earth have been here less than 75 years, and that's not very long. And what do we know? I mean, there's even like the Dust Bowl that happened. I mean, there's many different things that can happen to climate. For example, if the Yellowstone volcano went off, it would cause ash it would just cause a disaster, and it would cool down the earth really quickly. So we can't make assumptions. Now, regardless of the reasons for climate change, which they're changing, okay, we have to adapt, because the idea that we're going to just like vote or sign this petition or sign a climate deal and okay, it's all done now, no, I mean, the people that are complaining about climate, a lot of times they're living in the same lifestyle that's very gross use of resources and very flagrant, and they might be riding on private jets or have limousines or big office buildings, and they're whining about the climate. Well, the people who are cooking on a wood stove or a little wood fire over in India or Africa somewhere are not really hurting the climate the way the big cities and the polluters are. So the idea that we're going to get the politicians to go fix the climate, I think, is a little bit just not a sensible concept, because the politicians aren't really solving anything. And even if they had a plan, there's one thing I've said on many of these postings is that not one person on this earth has an experience fixing a climate or has a proven plan to fix a climate. They don't even know what a fixed climate is. They don't have a measurement. And if the population is growing and the tendency is in that direction, the momentum is not going to be held in reverse. I mean, we can't like put the brakes on climate anytime in the near future, because it's not totally up to us. And even if it was up to us, it means that we have to change billions and billions of people in a very short period of time. So my suggestion about climate is, look, okay, the climate is changing, and it has changed where, for example, if the climate changed where the Sahara is, wait a minute, now maybe we can plant something there or have something else there going on. If it changed where there was a drought and now there's rain, so it's our material borders of our land and so on that we say, well, this country over here might have a drought, but that's their country and we're not going to worry about them. Instead of cooperating and say, hey, look, we'll all use the arable land and we'll just like feed ourselves here. We'll adjust, we'll adapt to the climate. Now, if we think that we're, as human beings, are having a tremendous effect on the climate and we want to change our effect on it, then why don't we all just live a little simpler? That's just, talking and signing petitions and doing likes and sending around, warning, whatever. Everybody has to live a little simpler. If our lives are having effect on pollution and so on, the things that we consume, then it just takes billions of people to slowly live a little differently. And not by having like regulations. The thing about there's money to be made in trading these carbon trade, and there's all these devices and smart meters, and they're going to regulate everything, and they're going to like manage every household, how many kilowatts you can use, and that's their concept of it. The regulator concept. Control everything. Manage everything. Kind of like get in everybody's face and manage their lives, as if they can't just adjust themselves, So the overall blanket of climate, is propaganda when they try to take a complex thing and make it simple. That's propaganda. That's a well-known propaganda technique. So if they just insult, you're a climate denier, or are you going to be a climate voter? What's a climate voter? A climate voter. These are senseless phrases that doesn't mean anything. How about just be a climate human being? Just get up in the morning and live simpler and adjust to what things, and just like the weather, if it's going to rain that day, you get an umbrella or something. If the climate is changing and the seas are rising, then how about just stop building on the coastline there? So I'm putting my 2 cents out there so I don't have to say it over and over, because we need a dialogue. And I think what I'm saying makes a lot of sense, because it's not that simple an issue. And for thousands of years, people lived on this earth quite happily. They had incredible civilization. They didn't have electricity the way we do. They didn't have computers. They didn't have iPhones. They didn't have the 1,000,001 things you can buy at Walmart's. But they had life, and they had enlightenment, and they had health, and they had happiness. And if we want our Earth to be different, and we think that it's human caused and all that, like I said, we have to individually adapt, and that might mean moving. That might mean moving to higher ground or something, or to another country. But if the water is rising so fast that I don't see people making any boats, or they're not like evacuating the cities. I mean, if there was really a serious immediate threat of London and Bangkok and New York City and Miami all going underwater, and all the cities around the world going underwater from a big ice sheet off the Antarctic, if that was really going to happen, I think a lot of people would be getting out there, the elites, whoever that knows these things, they'd be out there in their big ships. So there are catastrophic events that do change the climate. You can't like say everything's going to be this way for the model. You have a computer model that says this is how it's going to be in the next 50, 100,000 years. You don't know. None of us knows. That's stupid to have a computer model that goes 500 years when none of us are going to be here to even check on it, you know? So a lot of the stuff that's propaganda is about like, okay, maybe they have some ulterior motive. But I know one thing, that there are things that can happen astronomically that can affect the climate in a big way from outer space. Asteroids have hit the Earth many, 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 many times. There's all kinds of craters on the Earth. So I think that, again, you know, we're human beings. We're supposed to be intelligently adapting to circumstances and being able to use our brains to kind of forecast and so on. So if we forecast that the seas are going to rise, then you start building a lot of boats and you start shifting the population around, or something like that. You make plans to adapt to the circumstances. But the way they're trying to do it is, okay, we're going to spend 30 years trying to pass some new laws, and the new laws mean that everybody gets to live in a little tiny room and they can have 10 gallons of water a day and whatever, and that's their concept of how everybody adapts. But civilization lived for thousands and thousands of years without any of that nonsense. So if climate changes dramatically, and I don't expect it to stop changing, it's not going to go in reverse. And even if it does change back, it took decades to get this way. So how is it going to change back any faster? Especially when the momentum's going the other way. So if you just have to use common sense, the logic says that, look, the momentum is going this way. Billions of people are not changing. They're not making, they're making new engines all the time that are using gasoline and so on, and there's billions of them in use for our civilization. We need them for shipping and everything. So a lot of the concepts surrounding the climate change are really kind of ridiculous and juvenile, and I think we need to take a harder look. And that's my 2 cents for the day here, I guess. But my YouTube limit's coming up. But I'm going to make videos about different issues and try to flesh it out a little bit more. And again, these videos are made to have a dialogue, and I'm just one person out here with my little voice. So thanks again for listening.